Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today we've got a good episode on jig fishing. One of my favorite ways to fish. There is really nothing better than flipping a jig into the perfect tiny little spot and then feeling that thump, and you set the hook and it's a big fish and you're trying to pull it out of heavy cover. I just love it. Jig fishing is a great way to get big bites. When the jig bite is on, you can catch numbers doing it. And all species of bass love to eat a jig. So today I thought I would talk about my 4 favorite jig trailers. Really, there are lots of good trailers on the market. And this is one of those scenarios where I feel like I try not to get overwhelmed with having too many plastic baits in my boat. I like to keep things simple. I like to use things that work and continue to use baits that I've got confidence in when it comes to fishing jigs. So we will get into that. Guys, a lot of the baits I'm talking about are covered or are able to be purchased at thereelshot.com. The description is in my link. If you do end up buying something, use the coupon code STEFAN10 to save 10% off your purchase. It helps support the channel. So that would be great if you could go there. Lastly, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you don't subscribe to my channel yet, you want to do so because it gets you entered into my monthly drawings. And there's really no reason not to subscribe if you watch on a regular basis. So I'm getting ready to head out to do some jig fishing here tomorrow. It's a great bait up here in Wisconsin. It's a great bait everywhere you go, but it seems to just excel all over throughout the state of Wisconsin. And I will be doing everything from grass fishing to flipping wood to flipping docks and fishing deep grass. So I'm going to do a little bit of everything, which means I'm going to have a handful of different jigs tied up. So I'm going to go through them and just kind of tell you what my favorite trailer is and why. The first one I'm going to start with is just a football jig. This is the Dirty Jigs football jig. Tour level football jig, and this has on it a little 3-inch Berkeley Pit Boss. One of my favorite trailers, just the Pit Boss. It comes in a 3-inch and a 4-inch model. I really like the 3-inch for tipping my jigs. It just seems to fit better versus sticking way out. In this case, you can see this is a pretty compact bait, and I like doing the 3-inch Pit Boss on my football jigs because it creates that compact object, that compact bait. And when I'm dragging this on the bottom, there are times I like to use a bigger creature bait on football jigs, but generally I like to have a more compact bait because it's a heavier bait. And the fish, in order to suck the entire bait in, really need to get the head. A 3/4 ounce or heavier football jig requires that fish to suck it in harder. And I find that if I've got a bigger creature bait hanging off the back, I miss a lot of hookups because they didn't get the whole bait. So I like to throw a smaller compact football jig, which is one reason I like to go with the 3-inch Pit Boss. But it resembles more of that compact crawfish, smaller bluegill. It's just a compact type bait. It also, I feel like, stays on the bottom of the lake better, which is where I want my football jigs. So a 3-inch Pit Boss is probably my all-around jig trailer. I can use it on everything, but I really like to throw it on football jigs as well as any sort of compact jigs too. Any smaller jig profile, that 3-inch size Pit Boss works great. The next one would be, this is a Strike King Menace. I like to throw the Menace on jigs that I'm going to be stroking the jig out in deeper water along grass edges. It seems to be a really good bait because it's compact. It resembles a bluegill. It's that same size. The motion is a nice compact kicking motion, so it doesn't prevent the bait from falling. So when you're stroking a jig, and I'll do a video on stroking a jig because that's one of my favorite ways to fish. But when you stroke it, you don't you want your bait to fall quickly. You don't necessarily want it to, you know, pull up high and then have tentacles and legs on it that just really slowly make it fall. You want it to stroke up and continue to fall quick. And this Menace, because it's a smaller profile, does do that, and these legs don't kick so much where it keeps the bait hovering. It gives it motion, but the bait falls still relatively quickly. And again, it's a compact body design. It comes through grass really well, and I just seem to have a lot of good luck on it. In this case, you can see I don't actually have a weed guard in this. I find that when I'm stroking a jig, a lot of times if it's sparser weed or I've got a really defined weed line edge, I don't like to throw a weed guard if I can get away with it. I get much better hookups, obviously, without having a weed guard. So the Strike King Menace is a big fan of mine as well when it comes to jigs and specifically stroking a jig. The next all-around jig trailer is just the Berkeley Meaty chunk. Now this comes in just the regular power bait or the Maxscent power bait. I like both. I think there's times I prefer the Maxscent, and usually that's centered around if I'm fishing a body of water where I think I could catch smallmouth as much as largemouth, because there truly is something to the Maxscent for smallmouth. They love it. But the Meaty chunk comes in a 2 3/4 and a 3 1/4 inch size. I use both. I tend to gravitate again to the 2 3/4 if I'm fishing anywhere where there's spotted bass or smallmouth mixed in, just because I really like compact jigs. But it's a great bait, great trailer for jigs for a couple of reasons. I really like it just on a straight flipping jig if I'm fishing around wood cover. And a lot of that's because when that jig comes up and around, you've got the Meaty chunk just kind of swinging freely on the back, and it just kind of follows the jig versus being part of the jig. Now I like to hook it through the nose of the bait, but you can also thread it up the hook if you want to shorten the trailer. But I personally think that's somewhat of a mistake, because I think you get more bites when it's just nose hooked and hangs freely off the bottom of the jig. And I think that just has to do with the motion, like I was saying. You know, when that jig, you're working that jig, this is kind of a secondary trailer that's moving behind it versus being a part of the jig. You get a lot more action out of the bait by having it just nose hooked. But the Meaty chunk is a great traditional style jig trailer, and one that, again, I use if I'm flipping wood or stumps or laydowns. I'm almost always going with a Meaty chunks type trailer. The last jig trailer that I really like to use is this is a Berkeley Maxscent Creature Hawg. Now this is a beaver style bait. You can see it, it's got the ribbed inside. Doesn't have a ton for kicking motions or kicking legs. It doesn't really give off a ton of vibration. It's got much more of that beaver style glide fall. But that's why I love using it on a jig trailer, because it gives the bait the jig will glide with it versus falling straight down with something that's got some legs that are kicking on it. And because of that, I really like to throw it around rock. If I'm dragging this bait around rock, or if I'm fishing around a little deeper ledges, not like super deep, you know, Tennessee style ledges, but I like it on that as well. But more if I'm just fishing like a small bluff wall, that type of thing, where I'm relying on my bait to fall a pretty decent distance versus, say, throwing up into a foot of water fishing a laydown. If I'm fishing a bluff wall, or if you're in the Ozarks where you're fishing, you know, those stair steps, that's where I find that this Creature Hawg really shines as a jig trailer, because when you bring it over that rock ledge, so if this is the rock ledge and that bait comes here, at that point it's got a distance to fall, and you'll get that gliding motion, which is what triggers the bite, versus that bait just falling straight down. It falls and just kind of glides like a crawdad would when it's kind of scooting around. It's not that it's straight vertical up and down. It's definitely scooting and gliding to wherever it wants to go. And I got to tell you guys, this Creature Hawg is a jig trailer recently has had a lot of really good finishes for me and other people that I know who have been using it. It's become one of my favorites. Again, all of these baits, all of these trailers are relatively interchangeable. And there's a lot of really good trailers on the market that you guys can choose from. But I suggest that you try to keep it simple and you pick 3 or 4 trailers that are somewhat interchangeable from different jig types, and that, you know, you limit the number of plastics you're carrying. But all of these trailers that I've mentioned are fantastic on multiple different types of jig types, and they catch a lot of fish, guys. I've won a lot of money on all of these trailers over the years, so I recommend giving them a try if you haven't done so already. So those are my jig trailers. I hope this helped. I hope this helped narrow your choices down a little bit if you were kind of questioning the trailers that you've been using. If it has, like the video, share it on your social media pages, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We got new videos that come out every day, guys, so thanks for watching. Stay tuned for tomorrow's.